Hello and welcome back to the Elite Football Show. My name is Haider and I'm your host as ever today. I've got my good friend after a long time, Kos. It's been so long. Kos is an Italian football writer. He writes about Manchester United. He's a very knowledgeable guy. He's got fantastic insight and a fantastic eye for the game in terms of tactics, player analysis. So I'm absolutely delighted to have Coles back on the show. Welcome back, mate. How are you doing and how's life treating you since we last spoke?
I mean, it's been pretty good since I think we spoke about 5 months ago or something. And since then, I think a lot's changed. Top of the league and all that. I mean, 21's coming and stuff. I don't think it is, but yeah, it doesn't harm anyone to talk about it. But yeah, it's been pretty good. Learned a lot during this period.
Absolutely. Look, it's been very up and down, hasn't it? In terms of Manchester United, I know we generally sit on the same side in a lot of things. I think we probably
Yeah.
disagreed a bit on the long-term sort of plan, maybe with Ollie, but
Mm.
I'm very happy to be proven wrong as it is, and that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about United doing well, not about
Yeah.
agendas. It's not about myself being right. But as
Mm.
things stand, Cos, United aren't really getting the credit they deserve. Ollie's not really getting the credit he
Yeah.
deserves. But all in all, that's a positive thing, isn't it? Because we're sort of flying under the radar. Tomorrow you win the
Yeah.
game. We're recording this, by the way, guys, on Saturday. It will be out on Monday, so hopefully by then, United would have got the win. But all things considered, after that start, lack of preseason, everything put into context, and the way that I think that Ollie's managed, certain situations like Pogba, he's done really well. And United fans really can't complain about too much. And the ones that are, it's agenda fueled, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. It's about like their ego matters more than the success of the club, and that's how they actually bait for likes and retweets and stuff. But yeah, I think we've just got more variety in the team now, and since Ole is more about putting out a team that's in response to what the opposition is playing, we sort of need that sort of variety when we maybe change three players on the basis of the opposition. So I think we are heading into a phase where we'll probably have a second or third squad, which is pretty much ready to play every game, but they can't play every game. And I mean, people will still complain about it because they're already complaining about Van de Beek, and they'll start complaining about Stellish as well in the future. But I think this will start to happen more and more because that's what Ole really wants in the team. Like he'll have maybe four or five more players who may not play every single game, but they will when they'll play games, they'll help us win games and they'll help us win cups and all that. So I think that's what Ole really wants, and I think people can have all their agendas they want, but I mean, you can't quite beat them at any point of your life, can you?
There's always going to be someone who, if you say the sky is blue, they'll say, no, it's green. There's always going to be someone that says that. That's what I always say. But Carlos, before we talk about Diallo, because that's who we're going to talk about today, we've seen a lot of really great accounts. United Arena's done some fantastic insights,
Yeah.
and a few others. I know Abdul's done some really good stuff as well. A really good profile on Diallo, but we'll go into that in a second. But quickly on Van der Beek, you mentioned Van der Beek. He's obviously the player that a lot of fans are talking about. There's a massive
Yeah.
misconception on what sort of player Van der Beek is and actually how good he
Mm.
is and what his qualities are. I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's got fantastic IQ, spatial awareness is brilliant, very tidy on the ball, very intelligent, you can tell.
Yeah.
But the reality is right now, he's not. He's a number 10 for me. I know he's played deeper in Eredivisie, but people forget that the Premier League it's not played at one pace. And I'm not putting
Yeah.
anything against the Eredivisie and all these European leagues, but this is what a lot of players say when they come to the Premier League, that you have to change gears quickly. It's not played at one pace. So,
Yeah.
and another thing to take into account, Carlos, with Van der Beek, when he played deeper as a 6 or an 8, he played for a side that dominated possession pretty much in
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
95% of the
That's it.
games. Yeah. And they dominated territory. They
Yeah.
would play the high line. So they would have had
Yeah.
it's the equivalent, I always say, of Manchester City, right? When they go and play West Brom, for example, and the centre backs are camped in the opposition half.
Yeah.
So that's how high Diaz and Stones would be. So playing number 6 or number 8 or in the double pivot for Ajax is very different to Manchester United. So for me, while he does great stuff on the ball, off the ball, his positional awareness right now is not at the required level. He leaves too many
Yeah.
spaces. Do you agree with that? Because I think a lot of people are not understanding why Van der Beek isn't playing more and why he can't right now for me in the big games or even in the Premier League, unless you're playing a West Brom where they sit back, where he can't play in the double pivot yet.
Yeah, I think, as I just said, that what Ole is looking for is more variety in the team, and over a period of time, we'll see more players like Van de Beek not get enough minutes or as many minutes as his fans on Twitter want. So I think the issue with Van de Beek is that he's not Fred, he's not Paul Pogba, he's not Bruno Fernandes, he's not Scott McTominay, he's not Nemanja Matic. He just offers us something that none of those five or six players really offer, and that's why, I mean, when Ole plays in the big games, by big games, I mean the likes of City, Liverpool, Chelsea, or maybe even against Arsenal, we like to play a compact midfield so that Ole just allows the forward players to go out and just play. By the forward players, I mean the 4 or 5 players such as Bruno Fernandes, Rashford, Martial, and if Pogba's playing, he does that as well. So I think uh, he usually wants that compact midfield in there. And I don't think Van de Beek offers that. And when you look at a game such as the Burnley one that United recently won, what Pogba was constantly doing, that his which is actually his main trait, is that he likes to carry the ball past an opposition press, or he gets one touch, drops a shoulder, goes past 2 people, and he just is very progressive in his approach while carrying the ball. Basically, what Van de Beek is he's more progressive, he's more of a progressive passer than a progressive dribbler. And I mean, a lot of players in our team don't really offer that as of now, but he is not Fred. He doesn't go into tackles to win the ball back. He's more of an interceptor than a tackler. So he doesn't really yet fit into the category of being a player who can replace Fred or someone who can replace Paul Pogba. And what Bruno Fernandes is pretty good at doing is taking risks on the ball and constantly creating chances, making runs off the ball, running into the half spaces and stuff. Van de Beek isn't someone who does that either. I mean, although I think Van de Beek made some pretty good runs in the game against West Ham, which weren't really picked out, and he was subbed off at halftime. So I think there are signs of the fact that he's adapting to what the other players offer as well. Because, as I said, in the West Ham game, he was trying to do what Bruno usually does: make runs off the ball. Against, I think, Istanbul Başakşehir, he was playing in the Fred role, and he, I think, made a couple of really good tackles when Istanbul were attacking. So I think he's slowly being molded into a player who can adjust to the system, as you said. I mean, he's not exactly being allowed to change his playing style. His main attributes will still very much be there, but he'll just have to add something extra to his game, which maybe Fred offers or maybe something that Pogba offers. So I think it's going to take time, and it's completely normal. And I think a lot of the stuff that goes on social media is maybe exaggerated by what his agent, who actually wasn't his agent, and
Yeah, it wasn't.
people in the Dutch media, former players, or I think Ronald de Boer gave an interview about him. People like him talk about when they haven't really seen maybe how United play or what Ole demands in a midfielder as things stand, because we played 2 or 3 or maybe 4 different type of shapes right now, but Van de Beek doesn't exactly offer us what maybe the first choice players already offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the problem is that a lot of people compare apples and oranges. So you're
Yeah.
comparing Van der Beek with Fred, 2 completely different players. Someone said to me, you can play Fred and Pogba in the double pivot, but people need to understand its balance system. A lot of things. Look, Carlos, we can talk about this for hours
Yeah.
and hours, and we will do this. Actually, we will get you back on. We are going to talk about some of United's possible targets as well in defense and centre back and defensive midfielder. So, Carlos will hopefully be back next week, and we will do that. But let's talk about Amad Diallo. He is a red. I know we're a little bit late on this, but better late than never. Now, you watch a lot of Serie A. I watch a little bit, but I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen as much of Diallo. I've seen him in a short few clips. I've read, a few scouting reports on him. Very talented, isn't he, Carlos? Very, very
Yeah.
talented. He's obviously very highly rated. Manchester United paid pretty big money for him. How ready is he to to come into the first team? I know he's been training with the first team. I think we might see him, on the bench. He's more ready than Pellistri, for example. He looks physically, much more ready to play first team football. But yeah, how ready is he, or should fans be a little bit wary? Because a lot of fans, I think, are getting very excited because he's very talented. But I feel like there's a lot of pressure for him to come in and solve the right wing problem, which we haven't really solved since, dare I say, probably Nani, Valencia, that sort of time. It's been that long, and you see the graphics with United's attack, very one-sided down the left, not much going on the right. It's a big problem for Manchester United, and I think it does affect people like Wan-Bissaka as well going forward. So yeah, how ready is he right now? And do you think that fans need to relax a little bit with the expectations?
I think earlier today, this morning, I saw a picture of Amad Diallo standing on top of the ball, and someone, I think it was some random Twitter account, someone had a picture of Messi doing the same thing. They were basically comparing Diallo and Messi to each other when they're absolutely different players. But yeah, I mean,
I saw this.
There's comparisons with Ronaldo and a lot of other players that aren't even similar to him, and Diallo might not reach that sort of level at any point in his career. Maybe, hopefully, he does, but we can't really say that yet. So I think Amad Diallo probably offers us more for the rank that Daniel James does or Mason Greenwood does, because what he's really good at is picking out those half spaces in the opposition's defense. Half spaces, by half spaces, I basically mean the gaps between the centre backs and the full backs. So when you look at Mason Greenwood playing, who, by the way, isn't a winger at all for me, when he needs to be in that half space, he's usually towards the left of the fullback, and when he needs to be on the left shoulder of the fullback, he's maybe in the half space, which clearly shows that he's got very little understanding of how to be a proper winger. And that's why I think it was the Wolves game where he really struggled to do much on the right side, and as a result, Wan-Bissaka couldn't do much either. I think they had just 2 crosses in the whole game, which is pretty poor considering that they were playing on that side. So I think what Diallo offers is this really good understanding of space between the centre back and full back, and United don't really have a player who does that yet. Mata is more of that Ozil-like player who won't exactly place himself in those spaces. He'll probably place himself closer to the fullback and play a lofted ball in. Daniel James, I think Daniel James has sort of improved in that aspect, because in the Leicester City game where we drew 2-2, I think it was the first goal that Rashford scored. James, I think, did pretty well to pick out the half space in that game and created that goal before Fernandes played that pass in. So I think James is sort of being developed in that grain, and I think Diallo already has that in his game, by the way, because if you look at his games for maybe the Atalanta's under 17s, under 19s, he was constantly heading into that half space. He was constantly either dribbling into those spaces, or he waits in those areas, and he just stands there and allows the fullback to move ahead of him from the overlapping areas. So I think Greenwood doesn't do that, Daniel James doesn't do that, and I think Diallo already has that in him. And I think for the under 19s, he sort of attempted closer to 10 dribbles a game, which is more than Adama Traore did for Wolves last season. But it's different that he's got a success rate of 55% or something, if I remember correctly, which is still pretty good for a 18 or 19-year-old. And I think that's, again, a thing that Greenwood doesn't really do as often as we would want. And Daniel James is more of that grafter who offers protection for Wan-Bissaka on that right side. Diallo won't do that, but it's one aspect where he still needs to improve on. I think it's a bit of a dilemma in the sense that Diallo hasn't played with Man United as much as Greenwood has or James has, but he already has this understanding of half spaces because he's an Atlanta player, and at Atlanta under Gianpiero Gasperini, there's quite an emphasis on playing in those spaces because they usually play with a narrow front three.
And so they play with the wing backs as well.
Yeah, so that I think that's one reason why Diallo wasn't exactly a regular there, because he was still developing that approach in his game. Because if you look at the Atlanta under 90s, they play more of a proper winger and just a one striker. So I think Atlanta aren't exactly like Ajax said, where they've got the same sort of system from the under nines to the senior team. They play different shapes across all the levels of their academy structure. So I think that's why Atlanta weren't really playing him as much. And I saw people complaining about why Amad Diallo is not playing for Atalanta when he isn't really suited to their system yet. He's still developing, but even though he's still developing, I think he's still better than what we have at United, which is a bit shocking, but that's how things are. United attack down the right. I think the percentages of attacking down the right in the Premier League are the lowest for United. I think it's about 20% or something. Not quite sure about the exact figures, but 20% is pretty poor considering United want to challenge for the title and stuff. So I think Diallo offers us something fresh, which hasn't been seen at the club for maybe, as you said, since the Nani days, or maybe even since the Ashley Young days, because United have this habit of turning wingers into inside forwards since maybe 2009 or 2010 and stuff. And they've never had this proper winger in the team, which has costed us quite a lot of points this season. I think against Arsenal, we lacked width in the team. In the loss to Basak Shahir, we lacked a proper winger. So I think Diallo will offer that width more than any other player that we currently have.
Yeah, fantastic summary. What I would say as well, like you're saying, those half spaces, running the channels is something which our wingers don't do well enough. I mean, something that I picked up Rashford when Telles came into the side, and I think this is one of the main reasons why Telles struggled. You can see when Rashford, when he has the shoulder injury, he's had it this season. It looks like he's recovered a little bit, but he doesn't look right yet. Still, Cost. He still doesn't look himself. He didn't have a good game against Burnley, but he still came up with the assist, and that's for me showing how much he's developed. But something Rashford does when he's injured, he doesn't run the channels. He hugs the touchline, and that meant that Telles couldn't overlap. And I think that affected Telles' game. And now we've seen Luke Shaw come in, something he's done very well. But since Pogba's coming on the left, and obviously Pogba likes to occupy, he likes to pick up the pockets. He likes to come in a bit more centrally. Shaw's bombing up and down. Now, when you see what I noticed when Wan-Bissaka has been playing on that right-hand side, I think he seems to be a little bit more comfortable when Mata plays. Mata hasn't played much, but he seems when Mata comes in centrally, Wan-Bissaka can go. You're right, when Greenwood doesn't run the channels, and instinctively it's because he's not a winger. So I think that's a massive point. I mean, a really good point. And we all know Greenwood's going to be a centre forward. That's a given. He still needs to develop his hold-up play. I still think he's about 2 years away from starting at number 9. He will be Manchester United's number 9, no doubt about it. But when you put it that way and you look at the options, Diallo could see himself if Ollie's going to risk it, and if he's physically developed enough for the Premier League, he could find himself starting at right winger. Very, very possibly. I think it'll be Rashford most likely, with Pogba on the left, but it's a very big possibility, isn't it?
Yeah, I think another thing for Diallo is that he can actually play as a striker as well, be it in a one striker shape or in a two striker shape. So if Ole wants to keep playing a 4-4-2 diamond shape, which he does in the big games, it's not like Diallo can't play those games, because we've seen that Daniel James isn't exactly suited to that role. He's more of a natural winger, bar the half spaces thing. So I think what Diallo offers is he can just combine with the teammates much better than Greenwood does as well. Because I think it's not a criticism for Greenwood because he's not a winger; he's meant to be a striker. When United often break on the counter attack, Greenwood is pretty poor at combining with the players that are around him. He just sees the goal. That's it. He hardly
just goes straight for goal, doesn't he? He hardly ever crosses it ever.
Or maybe if Wan-Bissaka's around him, that's the only player he combines with. If he's got Rashford around him, he won't play a pass into him. He won't maybe play a through ball to him, which creates a chance. So I think that's what Diallo does very well as well. As I said, he waits for players around him to make runs around him. And Daniel James doesn't do that. Greenwood doesn't do that. Diallo does that. So I think it won't exactly be a surprise if by maybe say February or maybe March or something that Diallo does get some minutes in the first team, because he's, let's say, more of a natural player for that side. And since he's played for Atalanta, a club that at this point has a lot of players that really thrive on this freedom aspect of the game, where because they at Atalanta are preached to play this ultra attacking, organized chaos sort of system under Gasperini, and the players that they have really sort of thrive on just playing, just attacking as much as they can. So I think since we often play a compact midfield like Liverpool can sometimes to protect their centre backs, I think Diallo can benefit a lot from it because he'll have the freedom to maraud forward.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think something which is a positive for Manchester United is that he's almost an unknown quantity, isn't he? I mean, I don't know enough about him. That's why I've got you on here. So,
Yeah.
like we saw with Martial, came in and no one knows anything about him. I think defenders have no idea about his qualities. Is he ready? No one knows. So, he could come in playing absolutely fearlessly and with confidence and could find himself on that right wing. Another positive as well, Carlos, is that we're sitting here and we're talking about how United have 20% of their attacks down the right wing and we're top of the table. So you imagine if that right hand side is
Yeah, exactly.
the combinations right, the balance is right. You've got the right winger there, the right back there. I'm still not sold on Wan-Bissaka going forward. I think defensively, he's had problems at the back post, inside, in the channel inside him as well. He's fantastic when he has to use touchline and the one-on-one tackles. But there's more to the game as a fullback these days than just being able to tackle. So
Yeah.
I think that's another thing. But I think you will see, you got to give Wan-Bissaka a chance to have the right sort of right winger playing in front of him. But let's talk about Diallo's strengths and weaknesses. So you did mention one of his weaknesses is tracking back. I think that's really important. He's still young though, but that's something Oli demands, and that's why when Martial plays on the left, there is the worry that when he plays on that left, he doesn't track back. So that's one of the possible weaknesses. But yeah, talk about the strengths. Is he good at shooting? I've seen him. He looks like a very good dribbler. He's got intelligence as well. He looks to play the 1-2s and link up play. So yeah, talk to listeners about the attributes that are positives, some of the negatives, and where does he rank with the other sort of young players in the world? And that's a really difficult question to ask, but
Yeah.
he's obviously very highly rated.
But I think another thing which he did quite a lot at Atlanta for the under 19s and maybe for the under 17s as well is switching flanks. Like I just said, that what Greenwood doesn't really do is um, play those cross field balls from one flank to the other, where the left winger is sort of taking up a back post position just for connecting with the header and scoring at the far post, which Rashford can often try to do. There were a couple of instances in the Wolves game where Greenwood was pretty poor at doing that. So I think Diallo is very good at coming up with those diagonal switches from that right side, which Juan Mata can often do. So I think one of his strengths is that, and he'll look to do that quite often, and that's going to benefit United quite a lot in the long term. And one weakness, which I would say, which I've observed, is that he's not exactly a high volume shooter yet. He might just take close to maybe 2 shots a game, whereas someone like Rashford or Martial, as soon as they get a side of goal, they'll probably shoot it, and they'll end up with figures like maybe 3.9 shots per 90 minutes or something. I'm not talking about exact stats, but that's just a presumption. I think they shoot about 3 times per 90 minutes or per game. I think Diallo should be encouraged to take shots on goal more often, even though he's very direct with his dribbling and maybe with his passing as well. Because I think he had about 4 progressive passes per 90 minutes, which is pretty good for a winger. Shows that he's pretty direct and very vertical in his passing, that a lot of others that United have can't be. So I think he needs to shoot more often, because what United do quite a lot, especially in the big games, is they take a lot of risks on the ball when they break from transitions, in the sense that we know that Bruno Fernandes is a high risk passer and Pogba can be a high risk shooter as well. So I think there can be times when this puts the United defense under a lot of pressure, because We know Maguire isn't quite the fittest, quickest. Sorry, not the fittest. He's probably the fittest in the team.
One of the fittest, but yeah, definitely not one of the quickest for sure.
So I mean, whenever Fernandes loses the ball and when Pogba tries to do something outrageous, comes up with a poor touch that helps the opposition regain possession, that puts United under a lot of pressure. So I think it's actually a statistical research that someone did that I read about, that the benefit of taking long shots on goal isn't the fact that you'll score from them. It's the very fact that you won't allow the opposition to latch quick counterattacks, to pounce onto quick possession turnovers, or maybe secondly, you can maybe win a corner from it. And I think about 1/4 of goals in football come from corners. I mean, it's may or may not be true for United, considering how United don't score as often from
That's a
headers.
lot, though.
But
Is it a quarter of goals
yeah,
come from? That's a lot of goals.
yeah. So I think if you take more shots on goal, you're a lot more likely to end up with corners. And if you are more likely to end up with corners, you're more likely to score, let's say, 4 or 5 more goals in the season. So I think not just Diallo, I think a lot more United players should be encouraged to shoot a lot more, because the way we play, it can be high risk in possession and that can expose the defense. So I think Diallo should be encouraged to shoot more out of all the other players that United have, be it Fernandes, Paul Pogba, Rashford, Martial, or Greenwood. So I think it's one thing that would need to learn a lot, because what I've seen from him is that he's pretty nifty in the sense that, as I said, he can maybe dribble 10 times and come up with 5 point something dribbles for 90 minutes, but he won't be direct with the shooting like Rashford can be. So I think that's one thing which you can improve on. And I think secondly, when it comes to strengths, is that he's pretty physical in his approach as well. And that can be pretty much determined from the fact that he's played as a sole striker for the Atalanta under 17s, and he scored,
How
I think,
tall is he? Do you know?
he's 5'7" or something. He's not
Okay,
quite
so
tall.
he's and is he quick?
Yeah, he is quick.
He looks like he's
That's
got good acceleration. I
yeah,
haven't seen his top speed, but when I've
and he's
seen,
got pretty good turn of pace as well,
yeah,
which again shows that he's much more developed than in some other sense than Rashford and Greenwood and Daniel James. So I think he understands those spaces very well. Like, he knows where other players are, and he's got a bit of physicality with him, and he understands where the spaces are. So I think that gives him the trait of being a very good second striker in a 4-4-2 diamond shape, because the way United play, as you said, is to run into channels as quickly as you can. I think that's the sort of tactic which we will use against Liverpool, considering how they play and the way we tried to beat them last season, almost got a draw from it. Um, Not almost, I think we got a draw from it, but running into channels at Old Trafford. And I think that's one of Liverpool's biggest weaknesses. And I
yeah,
think the understanding of space is one thing which is very important in football these days. You look at Marco Rosa at Gladbach, the way he preaches football is
amazing,
it's
of
very,
course.
very important to know about these spaces in the opposition defense. It's not just about taking on defenders or about shooting on goal. It's about understanding this art of finding these spaces. And I think in Diallo and even Donny van de Beek, United sort of have that, and that's very good for having a lot more variety in the team than Solskjaer had last season.
Yeah, fantastic points. In terms of, it's sort of a bit of a two-parter, but it's very clear that Ollie's looking to move to more of a possession-based style of play, and
Yeah.
that's why when you look at our record against the smaller teams, we've only lost to Palace. Remember last season we lost to Palace, Newcastle, several other teams that we lost to. But in terms
Burnley.
of, yeah, Burnley, exactly, we're winning these games. Palace was first game of the season. Preseason. There's a lot of elements and reasons why we lost that game. But you look at the bigger games, and we've not won 1 out of 5. So zero wins out of 5. I think it's 3 draws, 2 losses, or 2 draws, 3 losses, which is not a great record. But it's quite clear that we're no longer looking to sit back and play on the counter as much. Before it was put up shop and then transition as quickly as possible. United have got more better ball players now. Obviously, we see that with Pogba, Bruno Fernandes. We're a better side. Is Diallo capable of playing a possession-based style, or is he comfortable in possession? Because one of the biggest issues I think with this United side is there's key areas in the team where they're not good enough in possession. So
Yeah,
I think in defensive midfielder we're not good enough possession. Centre back we're not good enough in possession. I would say right back is another one. I would say right winger, depending on who's playing there.
yeah,
So is that something that Diallo is? Maybe it's too early to say, but is that something he is good at in terms of in possession? I mean, I can imagine he's very good in the transition. I think
yeah,
that's where we really excel. We have a lot of transition based chances. I don't think we create enough possession based chances, which is a little bit of a problem, I think, at times. But also in terms of one of his qualities, does he like to take ball to feet, or is he happy to make runs? Because off the ball runs. One of the biggest issues with this United side, I think, is too many players want to take ball to feet. Rashford likes to dribble.
yeah,
Martial likes to dribble. Pogba, obviously. Bruno's starting to make some good runs,
yeah,
but again, ball to feet. You could say Mason's the same. Mata's the
yeah.
same. There's not many players that will make runs in behind. That's why Dan James's quality in doing that is actually very underrated, and fans seem to forget that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Dan James is the best footballer. He's got flaws to his game, end product being one, but he does that job really well. We saw that against Leeds. So yeah, in those 2 points, is he comfortable in possession, and is he someone that likes to take ball to feet, or is he happy to also make those runs in behind?
I think he's more of a ball to feet player as well, but he's someone who will allow others to not be as much of a ball to feet player as maybe he is, because we look at Wan Bissaka. Wan Bissaka is more of that player who is being told to exploit the half spaces when United don't have a proper right winger yet. So I think uh, he's someone who's slowly learning that part of making overlaps or maybe underlaps as well. So Diallo is someone who can certainly help that. He's more, as I said, he's more of that. He wants the ball at his feet. So I think United will try to improve in that regard, and because of him, a lot of players around him will improve as well. Because as I said, he knows how to hold on to the ball and make sure that people around him are making runs off the ball. So I think because you see what Bruno Fernandes does is, as soon as Bruno Fernandes gets on the ball, a lot of players around him just start to move around automatically. When Pogba's on the ball, they don't do that quite often. I don't know what's the thing about him. It's just pretty different to when someone else gets the ball. As soon as Fernandes gets the ball, a lot of the front three, especially, they start to turn into the Messis and Ronaldos of this world for some reason. I think Diallo is someone who United can rely on for the same thing. I'm not saying he'll be a Bruno Fernandes or something. He's someone who, as soon as he turns up on that right flank, closer to the fullback, the players around him, let's say, as I said, the player on the left flank, if that's Rashford, or maybe centrally if that's Cavani or if that's Martial, I think those players will be set into action automatically. They'll be told to make runs, direct runs, run into the channels as soon as Amad has the ball, and then maybe Luke Shaw or Alex Telles from the back post, or Pogba from the central area. So I think these qualities are very important when you're playing against a team that sort of parks the bus or is much more structured in their approach, in the sense like they are very 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 packed when when the opposition has the ball, and you just need to pick out spaces between the center backs or between the center back and the fullback. And if you've got this player who is almost a magnet of for the ball, and it allows others to move along the opposition defensive line, I think Diallo can certainly be that sort of player, and he's done that a lot at Atlanta. Because you can often compare Diallo to Dejan Kulusevski when he was at maybe Parma, and before that, sorry, after that at Juventus. He's someone who, as soon as he appears on the right side, a lot of players centrally just start to move towards goal so that Kulusevski can maybe play a ball in or create a chance from there. So I think Diallo can do that quite often, something that Rashford is still learning. I think Rashford's been learning this trait since the Van Gaal days, when he sort of tries to play a, let's say, a not exactly a lofted ball, but it's sort of a pinging ball for the towards the back post, where he assisted goals for Fellaini twice or thrice. I think Rashford's been trying that, but he's not quite good at it. So I think Diallo can do that as well. And I think he's not perfect, but he's someone who can help the team team improve in a more off the ball sense.
Yeah, that's very very interesting. And one of the biggest things I think is like you said a lot of time those half spaces running the channel. United's wingers don't
Yep.
do that well enough at the moment. And once we start having that on the right side as we do on the left, you'll see a complete. I mean, just think about the amount of much more time and space Bruno will get on the ball when he's playing at number 10. How much more time even the centre backs will have on the ball. They can step up a bit further forward because you're pinning the opposition back. And I just think that it's such an underrated signing for United to get someone of this. Well, he's still early days, but someone who can potentially do this role, and that's a positive. I think. I mean, Carl, the last question I'm going to ask you is: we signed Diallo, we got Pelistri as well. He's not ready yet, but again, very good talent. A lot of pressure on Diallo. That's the thing that I'm kind of trying to just relax a little bit because I really think that too many are thinking he's going to come in and do what Martial did, and I don't think he's there yet. He could completely surprise everyone, but as it is with young players, they have some great form and then they have a dip. And the problem is that with the fan base, and generally, I think with the modern football fan, is when he has a dip in form. Apparently, he's not very good. He's overrated. This sort of rubbish. I think Ollie's got a big job to make sure that he's kept out the limelight. To ensure that there's not too much pressure on him. But there's still lots of talks about Jadon Sancho. I still think Man United need to go out and get someone like Jadon Sancho. That's my personal opinion. I still think he's an absolutely fantastic talent. I mean, again, you saw the reactionary. We had a little exchange on Twitter, didn't we? Because people were saying how Jadon Sancho is suddenly not a very good player. He's a fantastic player. Should United still be going out and getting someone like Jadon Sancho if the price is right and they can still look at other areas of the team? Or do you think that they should be putting faith in Diallo, possibly Pelistri? Because I don't think either are ready still for a year or two. And then Diallo can play on the left. You can rotate the squad. Rashford doesn't have to play week in, week out. He can play up front. Would you want United to still go out and look at Jadon Sancho in the summer?
I would want that personally because I think I'm still not completely convinced by the fact that Rashford is an out-and-out winger. There's still, personally for me, there's still a lot of confusion about whether he's a winger, if he's a second striker, whether he's a proper striker. I'm still not convinced by it. And when it comes to Martial, I think strange things continue to happen with him just every second season. So I think, and Greenwood, I think he'll probably, as you said, I think in about 2 or 3 years' time, he'll be United's first choice striker. At least he'll play more striker. So I think that leaves us with about, if you're including Pelistri as well. So I think United will have about 4 winger options, and 2 out of those 4, you're still not quite sure if they're wingers or not, even if they continue to maybe do pretty well in some games and then maybe just fade off when it comes to playing in those channels, as we just talked about. So I think Sancho is someone who's already very, very mature in a lot of aspects of the game, and those aspects are something that Martial and Rashford aren't really good at, or maybe Amad isn't as well because he's 18. So I think you need this sort of player who is an established player on that side for that specific position. I think as good as Diallo is, I think he'll still maybe not play about 35 games next season. And I'm not sure about Pelistri because basically his numbers I thought weren't exactly great batting back in Uruguay, and I know he's doing pretty well for the under-23s, and he's been involved in the first team quite a bit, let's say, but I'm still not sure about him, even though he's a proper right-sided winger.
No, so I don't think he. I think he's more of a number 10, if I'm being honest with you, or he's going to play more centrally. I don't think he's got the pace to play on the wing either.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's weird since I thought his numbers in Uruguay weren't exactly great for a wing, and I looked at his expected assists and expected goals metric as well. They weren't, I mean, amazing or as good as a lot of our fans hyped him up to be. So I think you're pretty right in saying that he maybe isn't a long-term option for that. Maybe he's meant for another position, or maybe, let's say, a wing back, because what I've seen from him briefly is that a lot of his runs come from a lot deeper positions than let's say Diallo's runs for Atalanta or Rashford's runs. So I think I'm still not quite sure about Pelestri. So I think you just need this player who can elevate that wing play that United have, be it on the left or on the right, because you've seen games, especially earlier in the season, where I don't think United were excellent in playing out in the wide areas. Look at the Arsenal game or the Basak game or Crystal Palace game. We were pretty bad in transitions from wide or maybe crossing from wide. But Sancho is someone who understands the concept of playing in those wide positions, and I think people can say that the development of the other players will get hindered, and maybe Diallo will not be as good a player with Sancho. So I think um, I don't hate Martial or anything, but if United get a chance to sign, say, someone like Erling Haaland,
Yeah.
I'll be the
Bye-bye.
first one.
Bye-bye,
Yeah,
Martial.
I'll be the first one to swap both of them, send Martial to Dortmund and get Haaland. And if something like that happens, or Martial gets moved on for maybe a profit of maybe 20 million or 30 million at any point in the next 2 years, I think our options for the wide positions will be reduced even more. And I still don't think Martial is the sort of striker that Ole is looking for. It's more of a Cavani type, more of a Haaland type striker. So I think I'm still not convinced by Martial being an Ole player. So I think there is still pretty much a lot of room for someone like Sancho to come in and get us maybe to a much more concrete title challenge.
That's a great point on Martial, and this is not to say he's not a talented player. He's very
Yep.
talented. The biggest problem I have with Martial playing that number 9 position is you see Oli wants the number 9 to play on the last man, wants him to get in the box.
Yep.
Martial drifts into the left channel. It's his natural
Exactly.
instinct to do that. And the second thing about Martial, again, very talented. And I was one of those calling for him to go out on the left. And he does go out on the left when Cavani plays centrally and they're both playing. Another big problem with him on the left is, like I said earlier, he doesn't track back enough. And in a 4-2-3-1, you've got to track back. So, I mean, the other thing, another thing to add to it is that when he scores a lot of goals, but he's streaky.
Yep.
And if you want to be number 9 for Manchester United, you need to be more of a consistent scorer. I think Rashford's streaky as well, although he's having a good
Yep.
season so far. Hopefully he can keep it up. Too many streaky players. You need a number 9 that's going to score goals. Every type, dirty goals. And that's why I like the goal he scored against Villa, I think, the header. Marcel put his head in, Wan-Bissaka's cross, put his head in where he could get her, and it was a proper number 9 goal. And that's what you need to see more, Marcel. No doubting his talent. He's fantastically talented. And he does work hard. Anyone that says he doesn't is being a bit harsh. He could work harder, of course. But but he still does work hard. But I do have doubts. It's not about his ability. It's about if he fits into the system. And I do think that if the chance for Haaland comes up, I don't think it will. But if it does, Haaland would be straight in. And Ollie won't think twice about it. So I do agree. Have you got anything to add, Carlos, before we wrap up? Any last words?
No, I think, as you just said, that United have a lot of inconsistent players in there. As you say, you just said streaky. That's pretty much a synonym for inconsistent. So I think there's a lot of games where you'll see them perform in patches. Like Martial is known to be a player who maybe performs for one season and then disappears for the second season. And then for the third season, he returns to be a world beater and then all of a sudden disappears in the fourth. Stuff like that. I mean, Rashford's a bit more consistent. So I think you've got Bruno there, who's probably the most consistent player in the league. And you've got Rashford turning into a more consistent player. Cavani will be consistent once he gets a run of games. So I think you need another player in there who isn't essentially world class, because world class these days is a very, very, let's say, a lofty term.
Yeah, loose term as well. Everyone's apparently world class, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you've got players like Ronaldo and Messi there setting unreal standards. So I think you can't quite put Sancho in the world class bracket yet, because we've got Messi and Ronaldo there, basically. I think you need those consistent performers there, at least in the front line, because the way United play is sometimes very reliant on goals. So I think United needs Sancho, even though they have a bit more depth than last season.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Carlos, thank you very much for joining me today. Where can the listeners find some of your great work?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at @cos_Pandey17, and I write for a lot of places. You'll find it right there.
Give him a follow, guys. He always does fantastic, insights during the game. Thank you very much for joining me today, Carlos. We'll get you on next week sometime, hopefully, if not the week after, and we'll talk about some of United's potential defensive midfield options. Ones that have been linked, and also ones who actually would fit the system. That's very important. You can't just pick up a great player, of course, can you, and just put him into the system. It's got to fit the role and the dynamic. And we'll talk about centre backs as well. But guys, thank you very much for listening today. Make sure you check us out on Spotify. Give us a follow and a 5-star, hopefully, if you enjoyed this today, because that really does help this podcast get out to more people. Have a lovely day. Big game tomorrow. Hopefully United win. And when we talk about some of the centre backs and defensive midfielders next week, we'll be talking about it with United 6 points clear at the top of the league. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time.